Good morning. I'm Shara Weiss, the Library Media Specialist at Central School District, and I have here a veteran teacher, Mr. Mark McFarland, teacher and coach. And we're going to talk a little bit today about his reading personality and his favorite book and what's inspired him. So we'll get right to it. Mr. McFarland, tell us about a book that has really inspired you or that you love, and what it is and who wrote it and all that good stuff.
Probably my favorite book I've ever read. I read about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was from an author I don't normally read. I don't think I ever read one of his books, and since I read that book, I've read about 3 other books that he wrote, and that was Stephen King. I just never was into Stephen King. I didn't like the scary stuff, The Shining. I saw the movie. I didn't want to ever read the book. All the weird stuff, but he came out with one that he originally started writing in the 70s and put it aside and didn't finish it up until a couple years ago. And the name of it is 11/22/63. It's all numbers. And of course, that's the date that John Kennedy was assassinated. And as the story goes, it's in modern times, modern day, and this school teacher and language arts teacher goes to eat in this restaurant, and he has a buddy that's owned the restaurant forever.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of his cooler, if you walk back in the back of your cooler, you keep walking, and as you walk into the wall, it just opens up, and you step out into the street. You walk through the wall, and the year is 1958. And this guy has been going back and forth and to a little meat market, buying all of his meat there and then bringing it back through and selling it. He'd buy a hamburger for 20 cents a pound. And he says the weird thing is I'll buy 40 pounds of hamburger, and the money I pay the guy, and he had to get money from that time period, is always back in my pocket, so I'm not paying anything for it. So he always has real cheap hamburgers. That's why everybody eats there.
Wow, I wish I could get in on that deal right now.
Yeah, that'd be great. But the whole story is the owner decides that he's going to try to save John Kennedy from the assassination. He knows where it's going to be. He knows when it's going to happen. And he goes back in time. But from 1958 to 1963 is quite a few years. It's like 5 years or more. And he has to live through that time period. Well, one day when he goes in for his burger, the teacher, this guy is like really old and sick now. He's dying of cancer. He said, "Man, you've aged in like one day." Because when you come back, it's at the same point. If he spends 4 years there, he comes back on the same day he left. And so he talks the teacher, he's dying of cancer, talks the teacher into going in trying to save John Kennedy. And so that was the whole gist of the book. He has to go back and live in the 50s and 60s and then try to get
So it sounds neat that you've got a little bit of historical fiction or history and time travel. So you kind of have a little bit of
being a history teacher
genres.
and I've always been fascinated by the Kennedy assassination, and there's a lot of actual facts in it that I didn't even really know behind the scene, like what Oswald was doing at certain times and things like that. It just hit me.
So would you say you're more of a fiction reader or historical fiction, or do you branch out to other genres?
Historical fiction is my main thing. Stephen King's not my favorite author. A guy by the name of Clive Cussler is. He's had all kinds of books and several movies out. Dirk Pitt's my hero. He's a character in his book. I've read him for 30 years, and just about everything he's ever published. But Stephen King, since this book, I've read Under the Dome, which was very good. I went back. I saw the movie The Stand, but I never read the book. So I read the book The Stand that he came out with, and believe me, the book is so much better than the movie was.
The book always is better than the movie.
So, I am into Stephen King now and reading, picking and choosing. And one thing I really fascinates me about King is he ties his books together. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
I haven't read a lot of his. So.
And I never noticed it because I never read them before, but there'll be characters in one book that will be in another book, or there will be a town in one book that will be in the other book.
That's neat.
Like the movie, was it It? With the clown?
That's the one I started when I was in high school.
I never read it.
Too scary
I've never
for me.
read it, but the town in either New Hampshire or wherever it was the same town that this guy in the school teacher actually went to and stayed for a while.
Cool.
because he had to get a job, and so he worked trying to get through, and so he was actually in that town and there was references to the weird things that happened the
I
years
like
before.
it when that happens.
So it's kind of weird.
Huh.
I kind of like it when they all tie together like that.
So you could tell kids that are watching today that sometimes find an author they like and try reading other books that they've written.
Oh yeah,
And that's
definitely.
what I tell kids. If you like this book by this author, check out his other stuff.
Yeah,
you're going to like his
it's
style.
definite.
Show us how you read. I think this
How
is
I read.
interesting. This platform that he
I'm a Kindle.
chooses.
Not only am I a Kindle, but I am on my second Kindle. I've already worn one out. And Amazon is really good because after about 4 years, I wore it out, and I said, my Kindle quit working. And you know what they did?
Did they replace it?
They said, send it to us. We'll send you another one.
Excellent.
After 3 years. And so
Mr. McFarland was great at transitioning to Chromebooks because he's already so technologically advanced from using the Kindle. So what advice would you give to kids that don't want to read? What do you worry about with kids today with everything we're plugged into and distracted by?
I wasn't a non-reader in school. I didn't like to read.
Really? When did it change for you?
After I got married. I don't know. I picked up my first Clive Cussler book, and from that point on, I started reading. The first book was Raise the Titanic. And, of course, I was fascinated with the Titanic.
Me too.
The whole thing of trying to find it, locate it, bring it up, and they actually did what was impossible to bring it up. But, I don't know if you would want this on there, but I remember reading a book in 5th grade, and I reported on it every year until I was a senior.
No, it's okay. I think that's what we want kids to know.
I would rewrite it and put it in. Okay, I didn't as a senior. I didn't write it in 5th grade language, but it's just
okay. What was the book?
I don't even remember the book. Okay. I have no idea. But I just remember that I hated reading so bad that I would read one book, and then every year I would do a book report about this book, and my teacher from 5th to 6th didn't know, and 6th to 7th didn't know, and 7th to 8th didn't know, and because I just didn't like to read. I'm not even today, I can't sit down and read for an hour at a time. I just can't do it. I'm too antsy. 15 minutes tops, I'll pick it up and read it.
And that's why silent sustained reading, when done right, can work because it's a short enough time period.
I just don't have enough focus to do that unless it's a really, really good book. Now, on the 11/22/63, I was reading like crazy through it. And about halfway through, I started slowing down because I didn't want the book to be over. I've never felt like that in a book before. Mm. And it was like, if ever I could have anything in life, it would be go back to about 1962 and live in Jody, Texas, where this was based at, where this guy was living at. Because it was just, I don't know, it was just such a great town, and the people were great, and he was still planning on how to save Kennedy, but he had to live his life through the time period. And I don't know, I became a reader somewhere about 23, 24 years old. I started reading, and once I found Clive Cussler, I started reading everything he had. But it's like riding a bike. You can't ride a bike well unless you ride a bike. You can't read unless you read.
To practice.
And that's just the way it is.
Okay, very good. Is there a book that you remember beginning that you could not finish? I try to tell kids all the time, if you find a book that you don't like, abandon it, get something else. What's one book you thought you should have read and you could not finish?
Oh, I don't know if I have any I didn't finish. Clive Cussler had one called The Dragon, and it was like 500 or 600 pages long. And it was really good the first half, and we went through about 300 pages. It was just dry and boring, and nothing happened. And I actually just started skipping through until it got a little better at the end. So I don't know if there's any I haven't finished. Right now I'm on the trilogy. Is it Divergent? Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the last one, Allegiant, I'm really struggling with it.
I haven't read the third one.
I'm more than halfway through it, but it's just so going nowhere.
Yeah.
I felt that way about the Hunger Games. I thought the first one was good.
Yeah.
The second one was okay. The third one
dragged
on.
That's exactly what I thought.
And then at the very end,